Okay, so you brought this interesting, maybe slightly worrying note to my attention from Brazil's MPT, the Ministério Público do Trabalho.
Yeah, that's right. It's about a pretty significant Supreme Federal Court move, the STF.
They've suspended labor court cases, haven't they? The ones looking into potentially fraudulent hiring practices.
Exactly. Specifically hiring people as legal entities, Pejotização, or as autonomous workers when maybe they're actually employees.
And this suspension is tied to a bigger case, TEMA 1389.
Mm-hmm. And the MPT is clearly sounding the alarm about the kind of immediate consequences while everyone waits.
Right, so our goal here is really to unpack why they're so concerned, what's driving this reaction.
Precisely. Let's get into it.
They use some strong phrasing, harmful effects, impact on dignity of workers. What kind of scale are we actually talking about here?
Well, the numbers themselves are pretty stark. Between 2020 and early 2025, there were over 1.2 million lawsuits filed.
1.2 million. Wow.
Yeah, just on this issue, seeking recognition of an employment relationship, that's over 8% of all new cases filed in the labor courts.
Okay, so that's a huge number of cases now just paused.
Put on hold, exactly. And it connects directly to this trend we've seen growing.
You mean Pejotização? Yeah. Hiring people as like individual micro-entrepreneurs, MEIs.
That's a big part of it. The MPT's note highlights the MEI registration numbers. They went from about 11.3 million in 2020
Okay.
to almost 15 million by 2022.
So that's what, nearly a 3.5 million increase in just 2 years?
Yeah, it really shows how much this model is spreading.
And the MPT's concern isn't just the label, it's what gets lost for the worker, isn't it? The actual rights.
Absolutely. If it turns out these are really employment relationships disguised, then these workers lose out on a lot.
Like what sort of things?
Well, the basics, really. Paid holidays, the 13th month salary, severance pay if they're let go, contributions to the FGTS fund.
Right, the indemnity fund.
Exactly. Plus overtime, guaranteed weekly rest, unemployment insurance access, and even job security if they have a workplace accident. It's the whole safety net.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this other angle the MPT brings up, the hit to government revenue. The FGV study numbers are something else.
They really are. It's fascinating, actually. The study found, on average, a traditional CLT employee generates about $25,000 a year in revenue for the government.
Okay, $25,000. And for a PJ, a legal entity.
Just our $1,600.
Whoa, that's a massive gap.
It is, and the projection based on that is pretty alarming.
What did they project?
The FGV estimated that if, say, half of the current CLT workers switched over to being formal PJs,
Okay.
the potential annual loss in government revenue could hit our $384 billion.
$384 billion. How does that compare to the overall budget?
That would be something like 16.6% of the total federal revenue collected in 2023.
That's huge. The knock-on effects must be massive.
Enormous. It impacts everything public finances pay for.
And it's not just the money, right?
Yeah.
The MPT also mentioned impacts on social policies.
Exactly. Things like protections for women in the workplace, maternity benefits. Those are often tied to formal employment status.
So Pejotização could weaken those.
Potentially, yes. Same for hiring quotas for people with disabilities or apprentices. If the pool of formal employees shrinks, those quotas become harder to meet.
And they even mentioned a link to combating slave labor.
Yeah, the concern is that blurring these lines can make it harder to identify and prosecute situations of extreme exploitation that mimic employment but lack the protections.
Oh, so it's crucial to understand the MPT's precise point here. They're not against all service contracts, are they?
No, not at all. They're very clear on this. Their focus is strictly on fraudulent uses of the PJ model.
Where it's really an employment relationship just dressed up differently to avoid the rules.
That's exactly it. Situations designed to circumvent labor laws. That's what they argue is illegal and harmful.
So this note they put out, it's kind of a broad appeal.
It really is. They're calling on, the legal community, political leaders, economic players, workers, unions, everyone.
Asking for what?
For a serene, socially responsible, and legally compatible reflection, as they put it. Basically urging everyone to consider the serious implications here.
And despite the current suspension by the STF, the MPT sounds hopeful about the final outcome.
They express confidence, confidence that the STF, when it makes its final decision on TEMA 1389, will ultimately uphold fundamental labor rights and consider the stability of the whole fiscal and social security system.
So wrapping this up, we've got this tension. The STF trying to create legal certainty around different work contracts.
That's right, drawing the lines clearly.
While the MPT is flagging major immediate risks. risks to workers' rights, risks to the economy, all stemming from potentially fraudulent pejotização while these cases are paused.
That sums it up well. A need for legal clarity versus urgent concerns about real-world impact right now.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? With so many cases involved and such huge financial stakes. What does this whole debate tell us about how work itself is changing in Brazil? And, how will the final decision reshape things for everyone? Definitely something to keep an eye on.